I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Today is Thursday, May 25th, 2023. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. This is the third anniversary, the death of George Floyd. And as you can see, I'm here on Black Lives Matter Plaza. Literally no activity out here. A stark difference of what took place 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So we'll talk about this anniversary. We'll be joined by his brother, and we'll have other folks talking about today what has transpired, what has changed, what hasn't changed in America the last 3 years. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's known.
it was 3 years ago on this day, Memorial Day, when the nation, the world, was shocked and stunned by the video showing the brutal death of George Floyd. That led to a significant amount of protest, attention all around the world. Literally, people were in the streets protesting across the globe after they saw what took place to George Floyd. Many people felt this was a critical moment in American history, a moment where it was going to cause a racial reckoning. There were people who were saying that you're going to see massive change happen because you had millions of people all across this country going to the streets protesting what took place to George Floyd because, of course, he died at the hands of those cops in Minneapolis. Now, the cops involved, those individuals have been held accountable. But what we have not seen the type of mass change many people were expecting. We still have not seen the George Floyd Justice Act actually passed in Congress. We still have folks who are not wanting to move on accountability. So the question is, when are we going to see that? I'm actually standing right here, folks, now on Black Lives Matter Plaza here in the nation's capital. And just so you can see and understand, okay, the last couple of years, remember, it was 3 years ago. That's the White House all the way down there. There was a fence that was erected around that plaza because folks were protesting. This street was actually packed with people 3 years ago. 2 years ago, we had some folks there outside a year ago. But here we stand, folks. Here we stand in 2023, and literally no one's out here. Not one person. You don't have any protesters. You don't have anyone talking about what took place on that day 3 years ago. That speaks volumes. In fact, to understand, the last 2 years, we literally broadcast the show out here as well. Had our tent out here, the people who are out here, but none of that has happened. I think if you look across the country, the exact same thing applies. So the real question we have is, has America moved on? The reckoning everyone was saying was going to take place hasn't actually happened, or has the moment simply gone by? And so what was supposed to be a movement is that now extinct. So joining us right now to talk about this, we've got a number of people who will be joining us. But first up, we have, of course, the brother of George Floyd, who's with us. We've got our panel who's here as well, and so we're going to get to them in a second. But first up, Phil Floyd, glad to have you here, man. You're there in Houston, and the last couple of years, you guys were here in the nation's capital. Of course, meeting with the White House, hopefully trying to get some action with George Floyd Justice Act, but not this year.
Not this year. Pretty much we're going through the same cycle, Mr. Martin. It's like they want to play games. Timothy Scott and Lindsey Graham, it's like they're going back and forth, and basically it's all about qualified immunity, because that's the thing with these police unions. It's just difficult trying to get something passed like that, because to me, I understand that being in law enforcement, and it's a hard job, but just being a black man is hard right now. You have to worry about being murdered. You have to worry about wondering, can you make it home to see your family? People need to understand that. But I understand that it probably won't happen until it hit their front door. Then they'll understand.
Philonise, I mean, you're absolutely right. And again, I mean, here's what I am struck by. I am literally struck by the fact that no one's out here. There's not even any media out here. You don't have any of that. Again, I'm looking this direction. If I look, in both directions, no one. We had people who were, of course, laying out in the streets, people who were protesting. And is that a concern? Because again, if people need to understand, if you look at American history, you think about the action that took place. If we can go back to the Montgomery bus boycott, it was the lynching of Emmett Till that sparked that. That went on 382 days. Okay, started on December 1st. Then you begin to talk about other efforts as well. It is as if folks said, "Hey, nothing got done in 1 year, 2 years, so therefore we can just sort of give up." Is it disheartening to you that millions of people took to the streets 3 years ago, and here we stand here in the nation's capital 3 years later, and not one person's out here?
You know, his death took a tremendous toll on the world, and I'm gonna try my best to make sure, you know, that we can get this flame ignited again. Uh, we have a lot of problems all over the world. So when people think of George, I want them to understand that this can happen to you. George was just going to the store, and he was murdered by a police officer with his knee on his neck for over 9 minutes, with his hands in his pocket, with a smirk on his face, like he was a big game hunter, suffocating my brother like a fish out of water. So I'm gonna try my best, because I think everybody need to be out marching. Everybody need to be out trying to get some kind of type of change, some type of accountability. This is, to me, a global thing. It's not just right here. This is the place where people fight to get to. And people say this is the land of the free, but it has not been free for us. So I'm gonna need them to show it to me. That's what I need. Show it to me now.
We have seen some things take place. We have obviously the cops involved. They have been sent to prison. We have seen some changes in some departments, but we have not seen the wholesale changes that you and others have been wanting. We talked about here on the federal level what took place. We talked last year. Many family members who were involved in those negotiations said that they were angry with Senator Tim Scott because they had not heard from him. He said nothing. They've heard nothing at all. Now he's running for president. In the year since, have you heard from Senator Tim Scott's office, Senator Lindsey Graham's office, saying, "Hey, we're going to try to get this thing jump started again," or have they been completely silent?
They've been completely silent. You can drop anything and you couldn't hear anything. That's the sad part about the situation. To me, if you want to be in Congress and you want to be active and you want to talk about what's going on, let's talk about what's going on. Police are killing African American people, and the fact that we have so many people that's getting out and marching, even white people are getting out and marching. That tells them that, hey, something is wrong. So my biggest concern is, how can we get this done? I'm willing to go back and negotiate or anything. President Biden, what he did was he signed the executive order act or whatever like that, and that's really the law of the land. And that's all we get. That's all we getting right now. Because if he's not in office, then we're really going to have it hard right now. But the fact that he signed it, but we need this law to be impacted with on the federal side. So my thing is this: if we as black people still get out and do what we have to do, we can still try our best to get these laws passed. But to me, this is a major problem with what's going on with Tim Scott. You running for president, but you can't even help pass laws to protect black people, and you're black.
And again, he's out talking about why he wants to be president, but the reality is he has not stepped up, and it is a shock. First of all, it's not a shock that here we are, even a year later, and y'all have heard nothing from him or Senator Lindsey Graham. That says a whole lot about their character and their truthfulness when they claim they wanted to do something.
And you know, Mr. Martin, is the thing about it is, when we held the conversation, he said, "Hey, man, I'm business minded. You know, business minded. I understand, but we're talking about people. We're talking about humanity. That's what we're talking about. If you don't understand that, how can you run a business? That's what I want to know."
Indeed. Philonise, we certainly appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much. Certainly condolences to the family. It's always a difficult day on this day, marking the third anniversary of your brother's death, and hopefully we will see the kind of change that we know is necessary.
I thank you for that. June 9th, I'm trying to get my event together. It should be June 9th. And it's going to be huge, and I want you to be a part of it if possible, if you can. Another thing about it is that we had 60,000 Houston residents get out and be active, and they all marched because they wanted accountability for what happened to George. As you know, he was a historic Jack A. line, just like you. So it'll be big for you to be out there if possible. And I'm gonna let you know one more thing. I started my foundation, which is PACFISC. The acronyms are PAKFISC, PACFISC.org. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Philonise Keeta Floyd Institute for Social Change. We're turning our pain into purpose. I just thank you for just giving me this chance just to be able to speak on your show. It's a pleasure, Mr. Martin.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We'll talk about a panel again about today, what we are looking at, what we are, here we are, the third anniversary of the death of George Floyd. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, I'm Deion Cole from Blackish.
Hey everybody, this is your man Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. As I said, I am here on Black Lives Matter Plaza here in the nation's capital as we are doing our coverage here on the third anniversary of the death of George Floyd. I want to introduce my panel right now. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, joining us from Washington, D.C. Tommy Christopher, editor at Mediaite from Tuckerton, New Jersey. Teresa Lundy, principal founder of TML Communications out of Philadelphia. Teresa, I'll start with you. Are you seeing any activity today, anything happening in Philadelphia acknowledging this third anniversary of the death of George Floyd?
There's actually a lot going on. There's a few nonprofit organizations that really stepped up and said, you know, we are going to remember George Floyd by doing some sort of service. I've seen a lot of social media buzz that's around it. But I think ongoing, as people remember George Floyd, especially in Philadelphia, there has been real attention to figuring out the best way to do community policing and having a better relationship with the Philadelphia District Attorney.
You know what, Greg? Let me, and this is no diss on any organization out there. But let me be as clear as possible, because this is sort of the same feeling I have on MOK Day. Today is not a day of service. MOK's birthday is not a day of service. The issue was never community service. MLK's deal was, if there's any day where there should be mass protest, mass agitation, it should be on the birthday of Dr. King or the death, the anniversary of George Floyd. And I think service, and again, this is not criticizing the groups. I understand where they are from their heart and understanding, but service is not going to result in the action needed to deal with road cops that kill Black men, Black women, and other people across this country. And this, to me, is a mistake that people make when we shift the focus to, we commemorate, we have events. No, it's to achieve results so it doesn't happen again.
That's right, Roland. And the world should be watching you standing there in D.C. at Black Lives Matter Plaza, where the paint was hastily applied to stop what some people thought might be a moment of racial reckoning, a perfect storm of state murder of Black people, which began, of course, when the first criminals came over here, with COVID-19, with an impending election, and just where you're standing, of course, the tear gas smoke spewed, as with complicit Attorney General, the President of the United States stood holding an upside-down Bible right across the street from where you were. 3 short years later, there is a Rise and Remember celebration, 2-day symposium and festival in Minneapolis at the Best Buy headquarters. What you said, Brother Philonise, is very important. We've seen this show before. Social theorists would call it resistance and incorporation. When they thought that the world was getting ready to be structurally transformed, a lot of people got DEI jobs that have now disappeared. A lot of people got paid a lot of money to go speak at corporations. A lot of people got some dollars tossed at their various HBCUs or community forums. And here we are 3 short years later, and the brother of George Floyd, he and his wife are announcing that they've finally got their foundation together. Seems like they've been lost in the sauce. Tim Mission Accomplished Scott, a midget politically. No, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. A clown politically. Is now trying to parlay his blackface white nationalism into perhaps a ticket spot as the vice president of the United States. In Kentucky, the defender of the killers of Breonna Taylor earlier in 3 years ago is running for the governorship of Kentucky, Daniel Cameron. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And finally, what we're seeing underneath that, however, is that the people who seem to have made the most inroads have been the white nationalists in this country, who have used 3 years ago as the kind of villain that they wanted to organize themselves. In Florida, the governor, who won by less than 34,000 votes, 33,000 votes in 2018, is running a Boston as it relates to laws, saying that we must bring this country back from the edge that we saw in the summer of 2020. And of course, the Supreme Court today, in continuing to gut the Clean Water Act, Neil Gorsuch, following in the footsteps of his mother, who lost her job as the head of the EPA under Ronald Reagan because she tried to destroy the Environmental Protection Agency from the inside. Her son has continued the job. These white nationalists have used 3 years ago more effectively than we have. They have used it to conjure a boogeyman of what could happen if we just get lawless in these streets. Meanwhile, we're sitting back and having celebrations and having reflections and having memorials. And as you said, with the okey doke that they really pull up us on Martin Luther King Day, contributing our own backbreaking labor to do stuff that we should be demanding that the state do since we pay their bills.
The point there, Greg made, Tommy, we talked about DEI, things along those lines, and we know it's for a fact. A significant number of those jobs have been cut. Folks are being fired. Companies are pulling back. What was a focus about for African Americans, Black groups? All of a sudden, I can tell you in the ad agency, companies all of a sudden went Black-owned media was being targeted. Then it went to diverse-owned media. And so now we have these upfront, they were having Black-owned media upfronts. Now it's, again, diverse-owned upfronts, or basically they got rid of those at all. And so now it's sort of this broadening deal. Again, as each year goes by, the focus gets away from the original intent that, frankly, is America at its best.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it's probably not a shock to anybody on this panel if I were to observe that, you know, it seems like the blacker things get, the heavier the backlash gets. And so, like you said, you know, when Black Lives Matter came to the fore, all of a sudden it's okay. You know what? Let's back off of that. Like you said, you know, it's let's talk about people of color and diversity, et cetera, and not be so pro-black. But I would like to pick up on what I guess it was you, Roland, were saying about this not being a day of service, because I find that the thing that my beat is the White House, and I've been hearing. I saw somebody on CNN today talking about how people are not satisfied with what Joe Biden has done about racial justice, and the fact of the matter is, the man had a very slim majority in the Senate. He had the House for 2 years. He got done what he could do, but now all he can do is do executive orders and try and get more Democrats elected. And I hear people say, "Oh, is that always the answer? Is just go vote?" Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's the answer. Because you're not going to get with a half of a vote majority in the Senate and a minority in the House. You're just not going to get meaningful, reform. And people talk about reform. What is really needed is accountability. I say this all the time. People want to talk about funding this and training that. No, accountability. If the police know that when they do something like this, they're going to go to jail, they'll stop doing it. That's the only thing that's going to make them stop doing it.
But to that particular point there, I mean, the reality is, when we talk about the voting, it's also, you look at the woman who just won the Democratic nomination for mayor of Philadelphia. She wants to bring back stop and frisk.
That's exactly right.
And so, I mean, and so in many ways, she's sounding like Eric Adams, who's now the mayor of New York, both African American. And so here we are talking about getting rid of those things. There are black people being targeted more than anybody else. And now you got black candidates trying to bring back those very things that contribute to the problem. I want to bring in right now Brenda Goss Andrews. She's the president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, known as NOBLE Alexandria. And Brenda, on that point there, I mean, here we are dealing with the third anniversary of George Floyd's death, talking about getting away from those things that negatively impacted black people. And you literally have candidates who are so afraid of being called soft on crime by the right that they literally want to go back to adopt the things that got us in a lot of the trouble we're in right now, like stop and frisk.
Absolutely, Roland. Thank you for having me on the show again. We must all continue to stay vigilant, because let me just say this. NOBLE was founded in 1976, and we were dealing with police brutality in D.C. and throughout the country. And that's why we were founded. And so some of the I agree with the other panelists is that accountability is key. We can train and we can talk, but we have to hold our CEOs, we have to hold our municipalities, we have to hold everyone accountable. And then one of the things that came out of George Floyd, I think, is that we're seeing police officers being held accountable in the courts. And it's just not in the police department. We have to look at what's happening in our courts, what's happening with our judges. What are they doing? Are they prosecuting? Are they giving the kind of sentences that are commensurate with the crime? So I think that's what we're seeing, kind of a trend towards that I didn't see on the police department. I served 30 years on the Detroit Police Department, and we didn't see officers being prosecuted. We didn't see this kind of thing. So slowly but surely, we are beginning to see that, but we can't take our eye off. We have to stay vigilant, and also agree with the other panelists is that we do have to get out and vote. If we don't get out and vote, we can't expect the kind of reforms that we need in the Black community.
We talked earlier about the failure of Senator Tim Scott and Senator Lindsey Graham to get moving on the George Floyd Justice Act in the United States Senate. NOBLE was a part of those discussions. And really what you had was Senator Scott hiding behind this rogue thug sheriff in South Carolina when you had two other major law enforcement groups, including Fraternal Order Police, who were moving forward. He lied about Democrats saying they were trying to defund the police, and they said that simply was not the case. And so just share your thoughts on the failure of Republicans to act on the George Floyd Justice Act just 3 years later.
Well, it was a lot of breakdown, Roland, and certainly Noble was at the forefront in terms of helping, craft and talk about some of that language in the George Floyd. So we share the disappointment of many that tried to get that in the community to get that moving. So we are still having those discussions on how we can move forward on some of those things that were in the George Floyd. But I just want to go back and reiterate, is we're not happy with some of the direction that our politicians are taking, our legislators. We can only expect reform if we vote. And I think we're talking about it, but we need to talk about that more. If we don't like what they're saying, we don't like what they're doing, then we need to get out in critical masses and go to the polls.
All right, then. Well, look, we certainly appreciate you joining us today, talking about these very issues. Lots more work to get done. Brenda Goss Andrews, thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Bye now.
Folks, hold tight. We're going to come back. I'm going to talk to the state's attorney and Aisha Bravevoy about what DAs have been doing the last 3 years. And we'll continue our conversation on the third anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. It took place 3 years ago today in Minneapolis. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Black Star Network. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. Also, folks, if you are watching, download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone. And Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Also, support our Bring the Fun fan club. Your dollars matter. See your check and money orders. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to get a copy of my book, Why Fear: How the Brown of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available at bookstores nationwide. Download your copy on Audible. We'll be right back.
Coming up next on The Frequency, right here on the Black Star Network, Shanita Hubbard. We're talking about the ride or die chick. We're breaking it down. The stereotype of the strong Black woman.
Some of us are operating with it as if it's a badge of honor. Like, you even hear Black women like aspiring to be this ride or die chick, aspiring to be this strong Black woman trope at their own expense.
Next on The Frequency, right here on the Black Star Network.
That was a pivotal time. I remember Kevin Hart telling me that. He's like, man, what you doing, man? You got to stay on stage. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm young, thinking, like, I'm good. And he was absolutely right.
What show did you have at that time?
This was one-on-one.
Got it.
During that time.
So you're doing one-on-one, going great. Yeah. You making money. You like.
I'm like, I don't need to leave. I don't need to leave from Wednesday, Thursday to Sunday. I didn't want to do that. It was just like, I'm gonna stay here. Or I didn't want to finish work Friday, fly out, go do a gig Saturday, Sunday. I was like, I don't have to do that. And I lost a little bit of that hunger that I had in New York. I would hit all the clubs, run around. Sometimes me and Chappelle or me and this one or that one, we'd go to the Comedy Cellar at 1 a.m. And that was our life. We loved it. You do 2 shows in Manhattan, go to Brooklyn, leave Brooklyn, go to Queens, go to Jersey. And I got complacent. I was like, I got this money, I'm good. I don't need to go chase that, because that money wasn't at the same level that I was making, but what I was missing was that training.
Yes.
Was that.
And it wasn't the money.
It was the money. It was that's what I needed.
Hi, I'm El DeBarge.
Hey, yo, Peace World. What's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Y'all let me know when we have Aisha Brayboy on. I want to go back to the conversation we were having before, and Teresa, that point. The woman who will be the next mayor of Philadelphia, again, she was advocating on the campaign trail, bringing back stop and frisk. That's the sort of things that, again, Black has been fighting against because we were so negatively impacted. That shows you, again, how this drumbeat of crime, has caused folks to want to do the things that we know did not work.
Yeah, I was also disturbed by the comment that our new Democratic nominee for mayor, Ms. Sherelle Parker, has made. But she also tried to explain, what she meant about stop and frisk, and that had a lot to do with the constitutional and unconstitutional way of doing it. I'm still a bit wary about what that actually means. From what stop and frisk actually means, it means you are stopping someone for just cause. And so without just cause, for anything. And, so I'm not sure what the unconstitutional way is, but I think, look, the city is minority, majority, African American in the city of Philadelphia. And so I think, if we are going backwards, then we won't be silent about it. So I think this is going to be an interesting term where if that is one of the major priorities that we think is actually going to combat gun violence, combat some of the other nuances that is happening in Philadelphia right now, then we're just on the wrong path.
Right there, Greg, shows you. First of all, that's utter bullshit. There's no such thing as constitutional stop and frisk. If you're stopping people just because of how they look, that ain't constitutional.
No. Sherelle Parker is an establishment Democrat. She's not a white nationalist. She's not a Republican, but she's an establishment Democrat. She had the support of organized labor, particularly the building trades. There was low voter turnout. The major progressive in the race, Helen Gim, who had been on the city council, couldn't really eat into the black voter base there. Unfortunately, there was a white woman who was in the race who's also to the left and drew from her. But ultimately, the problem in Philadelphia is the problem we see throughout this settler colony. It's a problem of race. In the precincts that were majority people of African descent, Sherelle Parker won by about 55 to 56% of the vote. In the precincts that are majority white, she got about 12% of the vote. What does that tell you in a town where the Democratic nominee in the primary will win the election overwhelmingly? It tells you that white folks still not voting for black people, and they're voting against their interests. Now, the progressive DA of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, was elected. It's not the progressive policies. Most people in Philadelphia and many people around the country are for the progressive policies, and in places like Los Angeles, in places like Chicago, they voted for progressive candidates. The Johnson campaign in Chicago still left some people shocked. But what we have is a problem of voter engagement, whether it be you rolling, going around the country, Cliff, Latosha, everybody else. If people simply will not go out and exercise the franchise, this is what we end up with. Finally, these organized nationalists, these white nationalists, are very clear. Voter suppression is their nightmare because they understand that when we participate, we overwhelm them with our policy choices. When people thought we were going to be out in the street and destroy everything, the damn city council in Minneapolis said we're going to change the name of the police department to public safety and defund the police. Well, what happened? In the next election, many of them lost re-election, lost their campaigns. And then after the presidential election, there was an investigation launched in Minneapolis. They still waiting in Minneapolis, St. Paul, for the results of that federal investigation into policing practices in Minneapolis. What we have to understand is that we must exercise the vote, but we must also surround that as one tool in our toolbox with organizing and getting into the street and making sure that when we do go out and exercise the vote, it is backed by our political participation every day of the year. It's really quite disturbing to see that just 3 short years after George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery's murder, we keep piling up the names, brother. We keep piling up the names.
I want to bring in right now a guest. She is a state's attorney in Prince George's County, Aisha Brayboy. Glad to have you on the show. Just want to get your thoughts. 3 years later, 3 years ago, George Floyd was murdered on this day. And what we have seen, we saw progressive district attorneys holding cops accountable. But what have we seen since? We've seen them force Kim Gardner out in St. Louis. We've seen the attacks on Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore. We've seen Kim Foxx announce she's not running for re-election. We saw what happened to Aramis Ayala. Larry Krasner has been attacked, where you have Republicans there have talked about literally stripping him of his powers. And what you have is you literally have people who are actually mad that cops are being held accountable for their actions.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got a sentencing tomorrow for a police officer who unfairly treated a young man in our community, a teenager who he assaulted. We tried that case, got a guilty verdict, and tomorrow we'll have the sentencing for that. I can tell you that, there were a lot of folks who were there to support the officer who did the wrong thing. The good thing was we had officers who reported it, and then we had the courage to investigate and to hold this officer accountable. I think we just have to continue to, we have to persist. We cannot allow what happened even 5 years ago or 10 years ago to rule the day. I think right now, because crime has increased across the country as really a result of COVID and not as a result of the policies and practices of these progressive prosecutors, they are being blamed unfairly in many ways on the increase in crime. And officers saying, well, we can't do our jobs because somehow treating people unconstitutionally or assaulting individuals or being bad actors is something that we should accept in our community if we want policing. And I think that it's just a flawed logic, and we can't accept that either. So we're going to continue to do our jobs, myself and those of us who understand the importance of holding everyone in the community accountable. But I believe that they are benefiting, that argument is being bolstered because, unfortunately, we have seen a rise in crime.
I'm glad you said that, because that also is just laughable to me. And look, I think what we're also seeing is, I think we're seeing deliberate slowdowns. I think we are seeing cops who are ticked off that other cops are being held accountable. So their whole deal is, you know what? I don't give a damn. We're just not going to do our jobs. And the reality is, to listen to some of these people. I mean, look, we just did the story yesterday where these 3 cops were indicted in Jackson, Mississippi. The police chief literally, when that case initially came up with Keith Muriel, he said, it was a medical emergency. The dash cam video, the body camera video showed that was not the case. That's why they did not want to release it. And so this was a black police chief who was defending these cops who tased a black man 80 times. Wow. And the man died as a result. And again, and so here we are. Last year, Samuel Singaway, with his own reporting, showed that more people were killed by cops last year than any other time in American history. So the question I pose to you is, what really has changed in the 3 years after the death of George Floyd?
Well, I think there have been a lot of changes. I think there have been a lot of policies that have been put in place. I think if we look just at body-worn camera policies across the country, we're seeing more and more law enforcement agencies utilizing body-worn cameras, and they have been very helpful in the prosecution of cases where we can prove that officers have, acted badly in an incident. I'll give you one example. We had an incident that was caught on body camera where an officer had assaulted an arrestee and then placed him upside down in his police vehicle, upside down. And then when he finally got to his destination, you rug him out like a sack of trash, where the gentleman hit his head on the cement. I mean, this was horrific, and we were able to use that evidence in the prosecution of the case against the officer. So I think body-worn cameras is a huge game changer. I think that across the country, we've seen more transparency in policing. Here in Maryland, we've got rid of the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, and so now law enforcement officers are treated like others when they are charged or suspected of committing a crime. So there have been good changes. I think at the national level, unfortunately, we have not seen those changes, which were promised but not delivered. And we're hopeful that we see that, the top of our government, our national government, really set that standard. But until they do, states like Maryland are leading the way.
Well, again, I think that it certainly has raised the consciousness of some different people. But I'll be honest, I think what this also has done is caused a lot of these white parents to really be scared to death of their white children being conscious. My book, White Fear, I talk about that. What we're seeing right now in this country, the attacks on progressive DAs, the changes in laws, this is a result of people who are angry about the demands for equity and equality and justice in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd.
Look, we are all humans. We all have to be treated with dignity, regardless of what race or gender or socioeconomic status. I mean, we have rights in this country, and prosecutors like me, we believe that rights apply to every single person. And my job, and I think the way that I can help this movement, is to continue to do my job. And so prosecutors who have taken a stand for the people, really, and against structural racism, against overreach by law enforcement, against brutality, we just have to stand our ground. We have to stand our ground. And I think that's the way in which we have to move in the future. But there will always be criticism. There will always be people who don't want to see change, but change is happening. I think that's probably why you're seeing a lot of the backlash, because they're seeing the change too. They're being held more responsible. A lot of their police records are no longer private or they can be published. The public can know about incidents of wrongdoing by the officers. So I think things are changing, and what we're seeing is just, in some instances, again, I have to say, I've been working with law enforcement for about 5 years, so I can tell you that the vast majority, honestly, are really good officers. At least I can speak for my county. But you do have groups and pockets within police departments that are bad actors. The question is, are they going to be protected? And oftentimes, even good officers protect bad officers. And that's, to me, wrong. You can't know what's right, know what you should be doing, know that you should be speaking out against and standing up against officers who are doing the wrong thing, disrespecting the badge, disrespecting the department and the community, and stand silent. The fortunate thing is we've had officers who have stepped up, which is why we've had successful prosecutions for the last 4 years against officers who were doing the wrong thing. But more of that needs to happen across this country.
All right, then. Aisha Braveheart, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and we're glad to have you in your position.
Thank you very much.
Folks. Thank you very much. We're going to go to a break, folks. I'm going to head back inside our studios. Like we literally are right here on Black Lives Matter Plaza here in the nation's capital. We'll continue our conversation. We're going to talk further about these corporate commitments, what folks are not doing, how they are not following their commitments. That was a whole bunch of hot air. We heard from many corporations. Billions of commitments were made. A lot of that money has not been spent 3 years later. What should happen next? We'll continue that discussion right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered from the Black Star Network. Please support us in what we do. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, folks. Also, we want you to also download the Black Star Network app. So let me just show you right here, folks. I got my iPhone out right now. Come back to me. Anthony, come back to me. So again, folks, I got the Black Star Network app right here on my phone. All you got to do is just simply, it's free. It's free. That's all you got to do, y'all. It's free. Just register. That's all you got to do. And so please do so. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your checking money orders. P.O. Box 57196. Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And of course, you can get my book, White Fear: How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. We'll be back in a moment.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, the wealth gap has literally not changed in over 50 years, according to the Federal Reserve. On the next Get Wealthy, I'm excited to chat with Jim Castleberry, CEO of Known Holdings. They have created a platform, an ecosystem to bring resources to Blacks and people of color so they can scale their business.
Even though we've had several examples of African Americans and other people of color being able to be successful, we still aren't seeing the mass level of us being lifted up.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, the necessity of believing in things you can't see. It's called faith. It comes in all shapes and sizes, and it's powerful. And it's a big part of being able to live a balanced life.
The valley I experienced being a cancer survivor was one where my footing was completely unstable. I had no idea what to do. And in that instance of not knowing what to do, I had to rely on faith.
That's all next on A Balanced Life, only on Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Gavin Houston.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. Joining us right now is Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, joining us from Atlanta. Cliff, 3 years ago, George Floyd was murdered by cops in Minneapolis. Folks were actually shocked and stunned to see that video, see the life snuffed out of his body. It led to millions of people taking to the streets in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, in Houston, in Dallas, in D.C., in New York City, Atlanta, all across the country, all across the globe. Yet
3 years later, we don't see anything close to that. You're very much involved in, again, trying to keep folks motivated and focused. And do you fear that what many felt was going to be a movement really has turned into simply a moment?
Hey, good evening, Roland. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. You know, we have that concern, right? Because there clearly has not been the progress that all of us wanted to see, right? All of us that were in the streets for 3 months to 6 months, right? And so, you know, recognizing that a couple of things did happen, that there was a change in the conversation, right? That there was, at least for a minute, that there was some more investment in organizations and communities that do this type of work. That coming out of it, even at the level of policy, that at least that this administration, which has not done enough on this issue, right, has not leaned into federal legislation on this issue. But one of the things that we at least did see was a Department of Justice that was able to indict those who murdered Breonna Taylor, right? Which, by the way, we all know the Attorney General of Kentucky refused to try to do. And so, you know, there have been things that have come out of that moment and that movement and those months that we spent in the streets, but it hasn't been enough. And so the challenge is, and what many communities have seen, right, is that, okay, well, how do we take this to the local level? How do we try to get action on some local policies? Even in Memphis, you know, where you had Tyree Nichols murdered, that you had changes in some of the policies there, right? And so the battle has to continue at multiple levels. Yes, we've got to get federal action. That means legislative action as well as more executive action. We need this Department of Justice to be more aggressive at doing things like you know, some of these consent decrees and you know, findings against these police departments. That's what we're calling for right now. You know, yesterday there was a march in Akron around Jalen Walker, still trying to get justice there. And so there are things that can be done at the federal level, things that we need to have happen at the state and local level. So part of our bus tour that we're launching this month is going to be talking about a range of issues, and police violence and police accountability is definitely one of the issues that we're going to continue to talk about in every community that we go to.
Thing here, Cliff, that people just have to understand, and I know there are people who are watching right now and who are commenting, whether on our YouTube channel or on Facebook, they're commenting on our OTT app, I know they are, is that you cannot show me in American history where monumental change happened and it was easy. And let me just go ahead and say this right now. For all of these stuck on stupid people, okay, all of these idiots who keep yelling, yeah, but they passed the anti-Asian bill. First of all, wasn't an anti-Asian bill. Second of all it did was create one staff job, and they gathered data for a year. Okay? It wasn't what everybody thought it was all cracked up to be. That's why it was so easy to pass. And so what people are going to have to understand, and folks like you who are in the trenches, you know this, nothing is going to happen like that. It requires people on days like this being on that damn street outside this building. It requires them putting constant pressure and staying in the face of Joe Biden, staying in the face of Kamala Harris, staying in the face of Hakeem Jeffries, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, letting them know on this day, there should have been folks flooding Capitol Hill saying, where's the bill? In fact, on the day that Tim Scott announced he was running for president in that joke of a rally, he should have been met by countless Black Lives Matter protesters saying, where's the George Floyd Justice Act? And so for people who walked out there and they protested for one day or two, we need them still in the game, because this ain't gonna be easy.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges in movement, right? And really approaching movement from a perspective that really takes in like the longevity, takes in all of our history and all the lessons that we learned, is that there's this balance that we've got to have, right? On the one hand, we've got to understand that it's a protracted struggle, right? We got to understand that what you just said, right? That none of these things happen overnight. People forget Martin Luther King gave his famous "Give Us the Ballot" speech. Not in 1964, not in 1963, not in 1965, the year of the Selma to Montgomery March. He gave the "Give Us the Ballot" speech in 1957, right? And so, it never happens overnight. And
1957, Voting Rights Act was 1965. That's 8 years.
That's 8 years, and that's 8 years of constant struggle, right? And so we got to keep that in mind, that this is long-term movement that we're talking about, and not just to keep that in mind in terms of understanding our opposition and strategies, just for our own sanity, for our own sustainability, we got to keep that in mind. But the flip side is this: there's also got to be a sense of urgency, right? Because if all we do is think about, oh, well, it's just long term, and we don't have some type of sense of urgency, to your point, that we need to be doing these things every day, right? Every opportunity we get, we need to be reminding them that we still don't have federal legislation to deal with police violence. We need to remind them that every day and be urgent about it and be consistent about it. But we've also got to keep in mind that it's a long-term struggle, because that when you have that mindset and is able to balance those two things, then you're able to take advantage of the victories that you have along the way. People forget that in the midst of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, there was also the Ahmaud Arbery murder that took place. And we love to tell the story at Black Voters Matter around the community where that happened in Glenn County. And one of the things that came out of the pain of that murder was that the DA, you remember, Roland, there was a DA, two DAs actually, that tried to bury the case, right? Because those that murdered him had relationships with the police department and with the DA's office down there, so they tried to bury it. One of the things that came out of that, in addition to the eventual convictions, was that community came together and you said, you know what, that DA, Jackie, I forget her last name, she was up for re-election the following year. And so it took a year from them to get there, but they got rid of her. Yep. She lost her job, right? Because the people were able to take that moment and turn it into a movement that was seeking to get not just justice for Ahmaud, but also justice for that entire community. That takes time. You look at Ferguson and St. Louis, right? And the things that have happened after Ferguson, progressive DAs and a progressive mayor that was unapologetic about dealing and raising the issue of police violence, that came out of years of organizing after the Ferguson rebellions. And so, yes, we've got to have a sense of urgency, but we also got to understand the protracted struggle, and we've got to be able to be consistent in organizing around these issues.
Let's do this here. First of all, I'm going to do this here. My question for my panel, then I'm going to ask you about your bus tour that you kicked off. Tommy, your question first for Cliff Albright.
Hey, Cliff, it's nice to finally meet you. Cliff and I email quite frequently. Sure. I guess I wanted to ask you, I know that folks, a lot of people who are supporters of the president get upset with you and your group for applying pressure the way you do. And I understand that that's an activist job, is to apply pressure. But, credit where credit's due. President Biden and Vice President Harris, they did executive orders. They have pushed and pushed for the George Floyd Act to be passed. What more do you think they can do? Do you think that the criticism is warranted, or is it just part of being an activist?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think certainly, you got to give credit where credit's due. And, I've talked about the things that this administration has done. I talked about the president's State of the Union speech and how I was glad that after he talked about the murder of Tyree Nichols and talked about Black families that have to have the talk with our children, right? And many of us were sitting there waiting because we felt like there was a but coming up, that at any moment he was going to say, but we need more cops. And he never said that in that particular speech, right? And so, we've given credit where credit is due. It's funny, we got a lot of people that criticize us for thinking that we're just tools of Democratic candidates, and then we get some folks that criticize us, saying that we criticize Democratic candidates too much and the president too much, right? And I think the truth has always got to be somewhere in the middle on that, right? That you've got to push. But as you said, you got to give credit where credit's due. So your question, though, is some of the criticism, does some of it have merit? And I think the reality is that there is merit to some of the criticism. Certainly, the Justice Department has taken some actions on investigating some of these departments. We'd love to see them take more actions, right? Similar, by the way, to their approach to voting rights, that the Department of Justice has filed some litigation. They've done some amicus briefs, but it's been nowhere near the level of what we need to see coming out of this Justice Department. And so I think we can do both things. We can acknowledge the things that they've done, but that we can continue to say, but we need more of that. Or in some cases, it's not just that we need more of what they've already done, that there's some other tools that we need them to try to use. Just like I don't want to go down the whole debt, the whole debt story and the whole debt narrative, but yeah, you need to negotiate hard. But at some point, you might need to use the 14th Amendment. You've got to use the tools that you got at your disposal. And that's the pushing that you often hear from activists on this administration. It's not that this administration isn't doing anything, and it's not that we're naive about the nature of Congress, especially now after the change in the House. So it's not that we're naive about that, but we still believe and we still know that there are some tools that have been left on the table, and we need them to use every tool at their disposal, because guess what? Those on the other side, those that are anti-Black, those like DeSantis and others, they're not shy about using every tool that they have at their disposal.
That's right.
Yeah, just to be clear, too, I would never be one of those people that says Black Voters Matter is doing too much and that, Cliff and Latasha should say to anybody, you know what, you're done. You've done enough. Thank you. No,
I get it. No, I think it's a great question, because that's a question that we, as a movement, not even just we as an organization, but that we as a movement have constantly have to deal with. The civil rights had to deal with that too, right? At what point do we thank and acknowledge what the Johnson administration has done? At what point do we continue to push for more, right? And so that's always been a part of movement, and that's why we believe we consider ourselves students of history and students of the movement, and it's important not for the sake of just trying to replicate everything that was done, because certainly they didn't do everything right, but there's some critical lessons that we've got to learn just about the way that we approach what we do, and certainly part of it is being able to acknowledge and give credit, but also to push and demand accountability.
Teresa.
Cliff, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. We can certainly see it here in Pennsylvania. Good friends of mine work on the Black Voters Matter in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, so we definitely see the work. One of my questions is, I think some of the engagement that you guys are doing as it relates to advocacy would absolutely help in some of these local elections. So what are you guys doing to help, some of these advocacy organizations that have been in existence that just seems like they're not taking the wheel and really advocating what some of the Black issues are in order for us to get to the polls?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that, and as you probably know, the bus was recently rolling in Pennsylvania for the recent city elections that were taking. And so, we always say there's no such thing as an off year, right? You got a lot of people right now talking about what are y'all doing for 2024, right? What's your plans for 2024? And our response is we're dealing with 2023. Because 23 is not an off year. You got all kinds of, as you said, local elections taking place, city elections taking place. You've even got some statewide elections taking place in places like Louisiana, Mississippi. And I'm going to tell you right now, and all your listeners could be the first to hear it, I believe something is happening in Mississippi, y'all. Y'all can write this down. I believe something is happening in Mississippi. Mississippi might just shock the country in their elections this year. But you got all these elections that are taking place that people don't want to talk about because they already want to talk about the presidential horse race. And so we're focused on that, and we're also focused on, and what we try to do to move some other organizations, part of your question was like, what do we do with some other advocacy organizations that, may not be as focused on some of the issues, may not be as focused on, some of the things that folks in the street are talking about, or as focused on these local elections, right? And all we can do, we have conversations, but we always believe the best thing we can do is just do it, right? Just do it and show people that when you engage folks 365 days out of the year, when you engage folks even in so-called off years and these odd number years, when you do a bus tour where you continue to go, not because it's a presidential election, not because it's a Senate election, but we're launching our national bus tour. We've already launched. We've been in Pennsylvania, we've been in Michigan, we're going to be in Texas, we're going to be in Florida with our friends at Transformative Justice. We're doing 5 days in 6 cities in Florida, calling out the anti-blackness that's taking place there. And so, we're doing all this in an odd number year because our issues, our communities don't just operate on a presidential calendar, right? We don't get to take a break every 4 years or even every 2 years from the racism, the gentrification, the police violence, the environmental racism. We're doing parts of our tour that's just talking about environmental justice issues, high utility bills, dirty water, climate change, and how it impacts already marginalized communities in terms of like natural disasters and floods and things of that nature, right? You don't get that from a lot of places, especially in an odd number year. But as we always say, Black Voters Matter 365, and we hope that by doing that and by investing resources, we gave out $9.7 million last year just to community-based groups. That's neighborhood associations, that's NAACP chapters, that's churches, that's organizations that aren't even formal organizations, right? We do. $1 out of every $2.5 that we spend goes directly out the door to local organizations because they're the ones that are doing this work 365 days out of the year, even in an odd number year.
Greg.
Thank you, Roland. And Cliff, it's always good to see you, brother. Eternal respect, man. Y'all are out there 365. Roland's going to ask you about the We Won't Black Down tour. So I'm curious and interested to hear what you've heard from folk out there. I was having a conversation a couple of days ago with some folk in Florida and who working with NAACP local chapters. And, sometimes the disconnect between the broad national organizations, thinking about that NAACP travel advisory in Florida, and the people who are living their lives in these communities, that gap almost seems like it can't be closed. I guess my question, and I'm waiting to hear what you're going to talk about with the Won't Black Down tour, my question has to do with what you've seen that has been the most effective in getting folk to the polls. We see low voter turnout in Chicago and in Philadelphia in the recent mayoral election. What have you seen in places like Flint and Detroit and Kalamazoo and Benton Harbor, the places you just came back from, and that speaks to things we can really do to get more people literally to the polls? And then how can those of us who aren't on the road 365 like you and Latosha and so many others are in this movement, Black Voters Matter, what can those of us who are not on the road like that do, not just to support you, but to, activate our own ability to kind of get folk out and engaged in the political process? What lessons have you learned, brother?
Yeah, those are great questions. I feel like I'm in class of Carr right now. There's a couple of ways to talk about like the things that are effective at getting people to the polls, right? There's the things that we think of as like traditional GOTV, get out the vote, right? It's those types of activities like providing rides to the polls, like election protection, like having polling place parties. That's something that we've done a lot that we've seen be really impactful in some communities, like making the experience of going to vote something that's exciting that everybody wants to be down with, right? So there are those things associated with the 2-3 weeks of actual voting in places that have early voting or election day type activities. But the more important answer, I think, to that question, the things that we've seen be most successful is this 365 approach, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't come knocking on my door in late October or in the first Tuesday in November asking me to save the country and save democracy, but you weren't there in the spring when that issue of police violence went down, or you weren't there earlier in the year when there was a school shooting, or you weren't there when my community was dealing with the flooding after a storm. You can't just show up talking about we need your vote. As we always say, there's a lot of people that care about black votes, but they don't care a damn about black voters, right? About our community. And so really, it's not rocket science that we believe that if we are engaged in having conversations with folks all throughout the year, deepening those relationships, showing that they actually matter, right? Not because they got a vote, but showing that they actually matter, that shows up when election day comes around. So in some ways, it's counterintuitive that we found oftentimes by not focusing on the election, right? By not walking around with the clipboard and having the first question somebody be, are you registered? But letting the first question be, how you doing, sister? Right? How you doing, brother? Right? What is it that you want to see? That asking that question instead of the are you registered question, that you can actually wind up getting more people registered or getting more people to turn out. It's counterintuitive, but we have seen it work time after time, place after place, year after year after year. In terms of what people can do, again, a great question, because one of our beliefs, and I say it all the time, everybody's an organizer. Everybody's got a role to play. Not everybody's going to give the speech. Not everybody's going to, do what Roland does. Not everybody's going to be a master educator like you. But everybody's got a role to play. It might be to cook some food. It might be to do some artwork for the flyers. It might be providing some music and culture at the events. It might just be sending a text message to 5 friends, telling them about what's down, forwarding the election information, forwarding something. And so everybody's got a role to play. We always say, if you see somebody wearing a Black Voters Matter shirt, it's not just because we give them out willy-nilly. It's because everybody that's wearing it has done something. We don't give that shirt out unless somebody sends us a text, and when we forward them information, a flyer, a protest, election info, that they have to forward it to 5 friends and family. I always say, you send it to 5 people you like, send it to 5 people you don't like, but send it to 5 people. Everybody's got a role to play in this thing, and when we believe that, Ella Baker used to say, show people the light, and they will give people a light, and they will find a way, right? We believe that everybody's got a role to play. And when we can communicate to people, including when we roll through their community in a big old black bus, the blackest bus in America, and really make them feel that they got something to say and that they got some power that they can help us utilize in our communities, that changes things. So everybody, if you want to get involved, if you want to forward something to your 5 friends, if you want to contribute in some way, the best thing to do is to follow us on our social media, Black Voters MTR. Send us a text, We Matter, to 25225. We Matter to 25225. Be on the lookout for the Blackest Bus in America coming to your city, to your state. We're going to be going to about at least 14 states over the next 4 months or so. And so, just connect with us. And we always try to find things that people can do so that they can get involved, because everybody's got a role to play.
All right, Cliff Albright, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot. And I got a lot of those shirts.
And a couple of hats, too, I think.
I got the shirts, hat, mask, all of that. So I've been putting in that Black Voters. Matter of fact, we got, you haven't been here. Y'all think I'm lying. Y'all think I'm lying. Just so everybody at home, just so y'all understand how we roll in terms of Black Voters Matter, and also, unlike a lot of other people, they have been big supporters of this show as well, and financial as well. So let me see if I get this here. Okay, let me see if I can get this straight. All right, I'm trying to get the Roku device here. I want to show y'all, because see, y'all think I'm joking in terms of how we roll here when it comes to Black Voters Matter. Let's see here, Anthony. I don't know why it's not acting right. My camera.
We got to get you to dashiki. I don't know if we got you to dashiki yet, Ro.
No, I ain't got that. Hold on, I ain't got that one. Y'all. I know, and Greg Carr sitting there going like, hold up, y'all got a Black Voters Matter dashiki?
I just texted you now, baby. What?
He like, they got a Black Voters Matter dashiki? All right, I'm gonna show y'all here. Anthony, you can go here just so y'all check this out. So just if y'all think I'm joking about where we stand when it comes to, okay, boom. What does that say right there?
Black voters matter.
That's one of the murals right here in our Black Star Network studio. Just so y'all know how we roll. Cliff Albright, I appreciate it, man. Tell Latasha I said what's up.
I will. Love you, brother.
My brother, love you as well. All right, gotta go to a break, y'all. We'll be back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the blackest show out here, Black Star Network. Support us in what we do. Your dollars absolutely matter. Y'all, we can't do this if you don't support us. I'm out here wearing these advertisers out. But trust me, it is not an easy task to get them to support black-owned media. And so, again, send your check and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And, of course, download our app. Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We'll be right back.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Democracy in the United States is under siege. On this list of bad actors, it's easy to point out the Donald Trumps, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, or even the United States Supreme Court as the primary villains. But as David Pepper, author, scholar, and former politician himself says, there's another factor that trumps them all and resides much closer to many of our homes. His book is Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines.
So these state houses get hijacked by the far right, then they gerrymander, they suppress the opposition, and that allows them to legislate in a way that doesn't reflect the people of that state.
David Pepper joins us on the next Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
What's going on? This is Tobias Trevelyan.
Hey, I'm Amber Stevens-West.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Jay Ellis, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So a North Carolina judge criticizes a controversial arrest of Devon Whitmire, a black man, saying the white officers didn't act appropriately by grabbing him without giving him a chance to submit and putting his arms across his face, then across his neck when he was handcuffed on the ground. The video you're about to see is quite disturbing. Now, if you want to turn away, please do so. We're going to show you some of this video. The total time is 6.5 minutes. We're not going to show you all of it. But here's what took place.
All right, so here's what's up. So they're confirming it right now, but based on your tattoos, we know who you are, and you do have a open warrant for your arrest. So that's confirmed, then you...
Okay, well, can y'all make up like you want to get off here? Where's your gun at?
Yo. Can I get his phone? That's my fiance. Can I get his phone?
He just said he had a gun on.
He doesn't.
Partner, you don't get tased.
Stop. Can y'all stop? He's not doing nothing. He's not. His arm is broke. So if y'all fuck with his arm, I swear to God, I got all this on tape. Yo, what the fuck? He's not doing. Why are you pulling his hair and shit? Why is y'all doing that shit? Y'all is doing some. It's okay, babe. I got it all on video. I got it all on video, babe. I got you.
All right, folks, joining me from Asheville, North Carolina is activist Michael Hayes. So, Michael, here's the first thing. Why was he arrested?
So, he was arrested because there was a warrant taken out on him for communicating a threat.
Okay. So, that requires 3 cops to essentially tackle him and bring him to the ground.
No, so that is the reason that we had started, having these conversations and protesting is, a lot of people want to talk about what happened prior to him getting arrested. What we want to address is the fact that there was no de-escalation tactics used. There were illegal holds used, particularly when he was on the ground. They do have holds that are supposed to be used if you are in danger of being, shot, or of the officers being in danger of being harmed. That wasn't the case. They also they love to talk. They want to keep talking about what happened prior to. So they said that he stated that he had a gun. So they felt justified in approaching that. But we all know that could have been de-escalated by asking the question, asking for a search, because communicating the threat warrant, even though it might have been warranted, it still didn't call for the assault that happened to Mr. Whitmire.
So this judge weighs in by saying, "What the hell?"
So, I mean, it's kind of a two-way street, because even though he did put blame on Devin, he also put blame on the officers as well. He did state that both sides were. So, regardless of what they say about Devin is not the professional. Devin is not the officer. Devin has not had training. Devin has not had de-escalation training. And then, speaking on behalf of his mother, there are other mitigating factors that they didn't even address, and that they could have handled the situation much different than it happened.
Well, I mean, look, it goes to show you what often happens with a lot of these cops when it involves somebody black. I mean, they would immediately resort to force. I've seen a lot of white folks lose their mind, act a fool, yell, holler, cuss, and scream, and the cops will sit there and say, "Sir, I need you to calm down.
Yes,
ma'am, I need you to calm down." So it's the juxtaposition is amazing when you see a lot of these videos.
So, Brother Martin, here in Asheville, I hate to say this, we were surprised, but not surprised. Asheville, which is located in Buncombe County, when you look at the fact that we are only 6% black, but we are 33% of the population. I think that kind of it shows you how they like to address historically oppressed communities. So my father used to say, if you don't know your history, if you don't know what happened, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going, and they'll continue to do the same thing. This has happened in Asheville before. The brutality from the police, the violence from the police has happened before, and we can talk about the structure and the system, but I think as a community, it is imperative that we say something now, because they love to keep bringing up Mr. Whitmire's past, the allegations, the things like that. So as we address what's going on now to prevent what's going on later, we're talking about coming up with solutions that are in a collective manner, in a collaborative manner, and really to address the fact police have biases, they have lack of training, and we understand that that's a state thing that we have to recognize that some of these things have to happen in the state. But as far as our community goes here in Asheville, North Carolina, we just want to make sure that our community pulls together. We utilize, the information that we already have. We utilize resources that are already there for our community to stand up. Because one part about the video, you saw the community come out and have their say. And, some people say, well, that escalated the situation. What I saw is it deterred the officers from further causing that young man harm. And that's what we need to do as a community. We need to stand together and make sure that we stand firm on our beliefs, but also train folks in our community so that this doesn't happen again.
Indeed. Michael Hayes, we surely appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me, sir. I greatly appreciate it. And hopefully you guys will keep following this.
All right, we'll do. We'll do. Folks, today the White House released a video marking the 3rd anniversary of the death of George Floyd. Here's that video.
I promise the Floyd family, among others, George's name is not just going to be a hashtag, but as a nation, we're going to ensure his legacy and the legacy of so many others remembered today. It's not about their death, but what we do in their memory that matters. The purpose.
One of the things that a lot of people have not done today, many of these corporations, they also have not done what they should be doing. We're going to chat with that in a second. Karine Jean-Pierre, who was the White House press secretary, also spoke about the death of George Floyd at today's White House press briefing.
So before I go into questions, I just want to say a couple of words about George Floyd. Today, 3 years after the murder of George Floyd, President Biden paid tribute to George Floyd, his family, and advocates who have fought tirelessly for reform and accountability measures. This morning, the president also vetoed a congressional Republican-led disapproval resolution that would have nullified crucial police reforms, many enacted in the District of Columbia on an emergency basis in 2020 after George Floyd's murder, such as banning chokeholds, setting important restrictions on use of force and deadly force, improving access to body-worn camera recordings, and requiring officer training on de-escalation and use of force. The president has repeatedly said we have an obligation to make sure that all people, all Americans are safe, and that public safety depends on public trust. It is a core policy of this administration to provide law enforcement the resources they need for effective accountability, community policing. And that's why last year the president signed an executive order on advancing effective accountability, accountable policing, and criminal justice practices to enhance public trust, public safety, which requires federal law enforcement agencies to do the following: ban chokeholds, restrict no-knock warrants, mandate the use of body-worn cameras, implement stronger use of force policies, provide de-escalation training, submit use of force data to the FBI's use of force data collection, submit officer misconduct records into a new national database, and restrict the transfer of military equipment to local enforcement agencies. The administration has made significant progress implementing these goals as detailed in a White House fact sheet issued just this morning. But we know that achieving comprehensive and lasting change at the state and local levels requires Congress to act. So today, once again, President Biden is urging Congress to pass meaningful reform legislation, including the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. It is up to Congress to send this to his desk, and once they do, he will sign this law.
So the thing that we are still looking at here is we're still looking at how all these different corporations out here made all these different promises, not being held accountable. Yesterday, I told you what Mark Morial, president and CEO of the National Urban League, said when these companies, they should be held to account. I want to talk about that when we come back because, again, that doesn't happen unless there's pressure. Let me just be real clear, y'all. See, some of y'all been asking me, man, why you go so hard on these people when it comes to black-owned advertising? Because they ain't doing what they supposed to do unless they feel this heat. You cannot show me in American history where America and corporate America did the right thing because it was the right thing. Rarely has it happened. Rarely. Most of the time, it's because of black pressure. We're going to discuss that next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, the wealth gap has literally not changed in over 50 years, according to the Federal Reserve. On the next Get Wealthy, I'm excited to chat with Jim Castleberry, CEO of Known Holdings. They have created a platform, an ecosystem to bring resources to Blacks and people of color so they can scale their business.
Even though we've had several examples of African Americans and other people of color being able to be successful, we still aren't seeing the mass level of us being lifted up.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Coming up next on The Frequency, right here on the Black Star Network, Shanita Hubbard.
We're talking about the ride or die chick. We're breaking it down. The stereotype of the strong Black woman.
Some of us are operating with it as if it's a badge of honor. Like, you even hear Black women like aspiring to be this ride or die chick, aspiring to be this strong Black woman trope at their own expense.
Next on The Frequency, right here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
This is Diala Riddle.
What's up, y'all? I'm Will Packer.
I'm Chrisette Michelle.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So, what about those billions and billions and billions of dollars that were promised by corporate America after the death of George Floyd? Where the money at? It is an important question because, Teresa, what it says is that we got to put folks in check and say, you're not going to pimp us in the moment and then make claims what you want to do, and then you don't actually follow through and do it. I talked yesterday about, again, this letter that, this press release that Mark Morial sent out, and I appreciate the press release, but I need more than the press release. I need more than that. What I need is, I need them put in check. I need the Urban League making aggressive demands. I need the NAACP making aggressive demands saying, not only where's the money, also what I need is we want a full breakdown of where's the money. This here is the statement that was put out. Again, it says that the President and CEO Mark Morial calls on corporations to update the American people on their progress to date. I get, Mark's my frat brother. I get this general statement here. No. What I need direct pressure saying we're going to go down the line, and here are the first 20 companies we going after, and we want to see reports. And then the next 20, and then the next 20, and then the next 20. That's the only way we get accountability, Teresa.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, I had this conversation with a few friends of mine who literally got jobs in 2020 because of George Floyd. And as appreciative as they were to go into an organization and try to figure out how to change it and make it better, they are now in a place where the corporation has now said, how can we utilize your services in other areas in the company? So the focus is no longer, you know, how do we figure out DEI? How do we figure out racial equity? And that's almost the problem, because we're almost going back to basics. And so when companies and corporations and, you know, try to figure out, you know, why their consumers is not doing what they need to do in order to buy their product or to be supportive is because their dollars aren't being spent. It's the same thing you've been saying since the beginning, Roland, but you can see that change. If it hasn't been spent with Black and brown communities, then you will, obviously the corporation fails, but also the entire mission of why they even started it also fails.
Go to my iPad, Anthony. I mean, look at this right here, Tommy. And this is how it's all over the place. The top line, it says, America's largest companies pledge more than $300 billion to address racial inequality, including with suppliers. Bloomberg story, $80 billion. Washington Post says $50 billion. Forbes says $200 billion. CNBC, the amount companies have pledged to support racial justice has grown to nearly $340 billion, according to McKinsey & Company. Their senior partner right here, Shelley Stewart, okay? Where the money at?
Yeah, no, and I think you've put your finger on it. And, you know, my beat is the media, and you know, a big part of the problem is out of sight, out of mind, and the media is getting less diverse, not more diverse. And so that's why, you know, you look these stories up, you're finding them on the websites. You're not hearing them talk about this on CNN. You're certainly not hearing them talk about it on Fox News unless it's to complain about too much diversity. And, you know, you don't really hear about it on MSNBC enough either. And it's like a vicious cycle. You know, the media is too white, and then the media keeps being too white, you know?
Here's what gets me, Greg. This is from the CNBC story. Go to my iPad. It says here, this is Shelley Stewart being quoted. You see dollars flowing across the list of what I call human development needs that are very acute in the Black community. In many ways, the pledges are targeted in the right areas. Still, it has been a challenge to meet such ambitious goals when it comes to deploying capital. No, it's not. It ain't hard to deploy the capital. Greg, I'm telling you, I'm dealing with this right now. All of these companies have been pimping the hell out of Black people, spending virtually no money with Black-owned media.
That's right.
We start calling folks out, and all of a sudden, they start admitting, yeah, we were spending less than 1%. Ad Age broke down that it has doubled since the death of George Floyd. The spending has doubled to 1.16% out of $322 billion spent in advertising. And we get it all the time. Oh, well, we don't know. Well, what do we buy? You buy the same shit y'all buy on Fox News. I sat there and I recorded. This was on May 16th. Matter of fact, let me just pull up right here. Just so people know, I'm sitting here. I wanted to see, because, you know, everybody be lying. Everybody just be lying, you know, what they do. And I sent it to my team. And I saw the Chevy Colorado ads. But General Motors told me they can't run their ads on this show. Because we do opinion. But they ran on Martha McCallum's show. The Cosentex drug. Yep, I saw those ads. I saw, watch this here. I saw BlackRock commercials on Fox News at 8 p.m., all opinion. I saw the Chase Freedom Unlimited Visa. I saw Keytruda from Merck. I saw the Nutrisystem commercials. I saw the Visa Inc. card from JP Morgan Chase on the 5. I saw Subway. I saw Mercedes-Benz certified pre-owned vehicles. They were a billboard sponsor of a segment on the 5. I ain't seen no Mercedes ad anywhere near Black Star Network. I ain't done. Let's see here. Let's see. Jesse Waters' show. They were Novo Nordisk ran an Anthony Anderson commercial on diabetes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that?
Hold up. I saw the same ad run on Laura Ingram's show.
Anthony Anderson?
Anthony Anderson, Novo Nordisk's Get Real About Diabetes.com ad.
And I'm sure her audience is paying attention to that black man.
But these folk claim it's hard to deploy the Capitol.
Well, Roland, we know what it is. You have made pitch after compelling pitch to all these advertisers 3 years ago when they thought that we were going to remake the entire world. They were running to throw money to stop that from happening.
Small money.
Small money. And unfortunately, too many of us got caught up. Not just the folk who got DEI jobs who don't have them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I sat here when the world was on lockdown and must have talked to a half dozen companies. Adobe, I'm not even going to name them all. And in most of those cases, they were like, well, we'll pay you. And quite frankly, I am, look, I don't make a lot of money, but that's okay. I'm not getting caught up in the money, because what I realize is the same people who worked there before George Floyd was killed were working there in June, July, and August 2020 and were scared to death. And we're talking about what they were going to do and how they were going to do. Those people still working at those companies, by the way, that are reporting record profits as a result of profit engineering during the pandemic and after. These companies have made more money in the last 3 years than they have made before, including the financial institutions, the JP Morgan Chases of the world, and so forth and so on. And last I checked, TD Jakes is in bed with Wells Fargo. Where are their advertisements, TD? I know you're an employee. Don't even try to act as if you're not. But it comes down to this. Logic doesn't matter. If logic mattered, the Black Star Network would be extremely well resourced. And I think this is the challenge. We know that they're not going to do anything unless they feel threatened. They felt threatened 3 summers ago. And at that moment, we saw a glimpse of what begins to be possible. Since then, they have held their breath, tiptoed past the graveyard, and waited on us to go back to sleep. So as a result, the Black Star Network continues to build on small donations, on folk coming together to fund the kind of content that is here, the programming here, you won't see anywhere else. And of course, those advertisers won't even run an ad on diabetes featuring a black man on this network. They'd rather run it on the network of a white nationalist, an open white nationalist, which means nobody is going to watch. In fact, the N-word is probably hurled during those 30 to 90 seconds more on Fox than at any other time on Fox when Anthony Anderson pops up. But the simple fact is they're not going to give you the money until we make them. And while we're waiting on them to give you the money because we make them, you know what begins to happen? You wonder what will happen to the Black Star Network? What happened? What happened? Y'all didn't get in the street. And guess what? They put up their middle finger as they continue to pay their stockholders record dividends because they don't give a damn about you. And their answer to your pitches is make us.
Tommy, that's just really what it boils down to. And look, yep. and Tommy, I'll be honest. When I look at the stuff that a lot of these media websites, they're not focusing on these things. They're not focusing on what the reality of what black-owned media is dealing with. But I see 4,000 damn stories about David Zaslav's and Chris Licht and CNN and everything else when literally black-owned media is being suffocated for lack of investment. We are being starved by essentially apartheid by these ad agencies and companies.
Yeah, it's a very pervasive problem. There's just not enough diversity in the media. It's too white, and like you said, there's not the investment in what black media there is, and that is a problem. And you're faced with, like you said, you know, how do you make them when you don't have the audience, you don't have the platform that these other sites have, these other companies have? That's the conundrum right there.
Well, you don't.
The answer, I think, is you know, to the best degree that you can, to marshal your spending power. You know.
Well, and here's the deal. The reality is we don't have the size of the platforms because we don't have the investment. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
simply just how this whole thing goes. All right, I got to go to a break. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, the wealth gap has literally not changed in over 50 years, according to the Federal Reserve. On the next Get Wealthy, I'm excited to chat with Jim Castleberry, CEO of Known Holdings. They have created a platform, an ecosystem to bring resources to Blacks and people of color so they can scale their business.
Even though we've had several examples of African Americans and other people of color being able to be successful, we still aren't seeing the mass level of us being lifted up.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett.
Yo, it's your man Deion Cole from Blackish, and you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Stay woke.
Now, y'all, there are some things that just tickle me to death. And I'm talking about that would just make me fall out and laugh. There was nothing better than yesterday than hearing that human trash, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as she stood at the lectern as the speaker of the day, whatever the hell they call it, actually having the audacity, the unmitigated gall for this white nationalist to actually say this.
The members are reminded to abide by decorum of the House. The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
I'm sorry. Run that back again.
The members are reminded to abide by decorum of the House. The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
So the fool who's standing up there saying, the house will be in order. Is this your trash ass right here?
Some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage. I get it, unless I agree to their economic plans. All of you at home should know what those plans are. Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. You know, it means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you. Look, folks, the idea is that we're not going to be moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond. Folks,
decorum, huh? Am I the only one who remembers when Obama was president and Republicans showed their ass? Press play.
Also those who claim that our reform efforts would ensure illegal immigrants. This too is false. The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true. And one more misunderstanding I want to clear up. Under our plan, no federal dollars will be used to fund abortions, and federal conscience laws will remain in place. Now,
that must be something, Greg, to hear that fool of all people actually talk about the need for decorum.
Well, I mean, Roland, we remember the huge controversy over Barack Obama's tan suit. When the white nationalists mean decorum, they mean anything that isn't white nationalist. Certainly it doesn't violate decorum for Marjorie Taylor Greene to walk into the floor of the federal legislature dressed like Ric Flair. It doesn't violate decorum for them. Woo! It doesn't violate decorum for them to come almost to blows and to pull each other back as Matt Gaetz threatens Kevin McCarthy and they start to almost fight with each other. But I would just say this. We know where this is headed. There isn't a show that you do. There isn't a night that you come on here that you don't give some form of history lesson. And if we want to know what comes next, when you start talking about people just basically doing whatever the hell they want in terms of not allowing other people to speak or this kind of thing, all we got to do is go back to 1850s. And how close are we now when they took the metal detectors down, when in the state of Florida, as of next month, open carry will be the law? How close are we now for somebody to put their hands on somebody in the federal legislature? And if that somebody is Jamal Bowman or Ilhan Omar or Ayanna Pressley, then the ass whipping that will be handed out will then take this to another level. See, the problem with Marjorie Taylor Greene is she wants to look like a WWF wrestler, but she don't want that smoke. So when that staffer whispered in her ear, tell them that the House needs to come to order, because you saw the guy do that. I'm just wondering if it was in response to her realizing she had no authority in that seat that rotates. You see him there? There he is. He's going to get up. He's going to tell her what to say, and now she's going to say it, and they're going to start laughing. Now, I'm wondering whether she asked him to do that because she realizes nobody respects her. But that's where we are, Roland. We are in a place where we've been before. When there's no respect, there's going to be no respect. And once this genie's out, it's all good fun and games, Ron DeSantis, when you're talking that smack, when you think the other side's going to have decorum. But woe that day. What did Langston Hughes say? Look at the Negro, meek and mild. Beware the day they change their minds. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she better be happy that laughing is the only thing that came out of that. But she should probably take a lesson from that and not push it anymore.
I've never seen Tommy where the half of the chamber just laugh at the person in the speaker's position.
Yeah, I don't cover Congress, but yeah, that's pretty. I have to say, I'm with Gregory. I think of all the harmful things that Marjorie Taylor Greene has done, including the way she targeted Jamal Bowman, I think what she did there is probably the best thing she's ever going to do, which is to give us all a really, really good laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I just thoroughly enjoyed just the laughter that they had of that fool right there. So I couldn't get enough of that. So but just even hearing the word decorum come out of her mouth is like listening to Lon Boebert say calm down. That's just sheer stupidity. All right, y'all, the family of a Georgia woman who died after falling out of a police car has filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit alleging gross negligence in the incident which took place in 2022. 28-year-old Breonna Greer was having a mental health episode and was being transported by a Hancock County Sheriff's deputy when she fell out of the moving patrol car on July 15th. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation determined the deputy failed to close the rear passenger door before the car left the scene. During a news conference, family attorney Ben Crump explains how the authorities initially tried to cover up what took place.
They tried to say that Breonna Greer, this 120-pound young black woman, mother of twins, daughters, 4 years old at the time, they tried to say she had superhuman strength. And Portia, they tried to say she kicked open the police door. That's what they wanted us to believe. They wanted to just sweep it under the rug. But thank God that you had a family who said that's not true. They wanted answers. Because the reality is they never closed that door and secured that vehicle. And when they were on the road, she fell out of that car, and since she was handcuffed, there was no breaking the fall. Her skull hit the road, it cracked in 2 places. She had a brain bleed. She went into a coma, and 6 days later, her twin daughters lost their mother because of gross negligence at the hands of the police department that was supposed to help this young black woman who was having a mental health crisis.
The $100 million federal civil rights lawsuit names Hancock County Sheriff Tomlin Primus, his brother, Lieutenant Marlon Primus, and Deputy Timothy Leggett as defendants. I don't know how in the world, Tommy, you can justify not closing the door and this woman ends up dead.
No, you're absolutely right. And I hate to be a broken record, but it goes to this thing again. It's like you were saying about corporations. Well, it's even worse with the police. They will not do the right thing unless they are absolutely forced to do so. And this is about accountability. Why do you think that they thought they could get away with saying that she kicked that door open? Because they think they can get away with anything, because they can. Until there's something major is changed, and we keep pushing for it. And broken record again, but you have to vote. You need Democrats because Republicans are never going to do it.
Greg?
Yeah, Roland, I think, I agree with Tommy. I mean, here's the challenge, I think. Something's going to happen. We just don't know. Certainly, we saw with the death of Martin King, the people in our communities, over 100 cities in this country, for whom civil rights legislation had not changed the material conditions of their lives, they burnt the cities. The fact that there's more police body cam footage now than before. I agree with the state's attorney, Brayboy, in that regard. The fact that we have these things that are seen over and over again, it may, and I think if history serves as any prelude, what we'll see is that Tim Scott, who did not make a mistake, did not slow walk or stall. Tim Scott went in, that's why we call him mission accomplished. Tim Scott's job was to make sure that that the immunity was not touched, that chokeholds were left in place. There was no federal legislation passed. The fact that people didn't show up, as you say, at his announcement and overwhelm the announcement with cries for what he did, that is one way of showing the reaction. Another way of showing the reaction is that when someone is stopped and they've seen enough of this footage, they don't give the police an opportunity to kill them. And I think we understand how that works in this country. If you're not going to do the policy fixes, you leave the most vulnerable people with no choice. As Ice Cube once said, I'd rather be carried by 12 than I'd rather be judged by 6 than carried by 12. And I'm not calling for that at all. What I'm saying is we have an option. Fix the policy. But what is not going to happen is that this is going to continue. And don't be surprised when people say, since you will not change the law, I am certainly not going to be a martyr tonight in the dark with these hunters who have come out here to kill me. You think I'm just going to stand here and be killed? Let's dance. I'm not calling for that, but history shows us that that is what will happen when enough of this happens. And when that one incident happens that sets that off, woe unto the cascade. We have an option to avoid that, but we need to take very seriously the fact that if we don't, that is the likely result.
Folks, hold tight 1 second. We'll come back for our final segment right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, Dave.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Peace and love, everybody. I'm Purple Wonder Love.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So, folks, before we went to the break there, Tommy and Greg were both talking about what these cops do, and Tommy mentioned, you know what, how these cops lie and how they get away with it. Let's go to Chicago. Go to my iPad, Anthony. More than 100 Chicago police officials kept their jobs after making false statements despite department's you lie, you die rule. It says dismissal is considered the appropriate disciplinary penalty for violating the rule, but the city's watchdog said it is not consistently enforced, undermining police integrity. This right here, folks, says it right here, point blank. These cops, they lie. They lie about so many things. We've seen numerous examples of what cops lie. They're right there, Tommy, in Chicago. Cops were lying so much on the stand, a judge literally called the accountability board. The judge like, they lying. They were blatantly lying on the witness stand. And he was like, what are they doing? We just had Aisha Brayboy on in the last hour. She has a list of cops. We had her on before. She would not call them to the stand. I have long said, others have disagreed with me, I don't care. If a cop lies on that statement, they lie in that police report, automatic termination. Because we've seen how they make stuff up and they cover stuff up in order to protect their own. Tommy? You're mute. There we go.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me okay?
There we go.
All right. So, yeah, it comes down to where political power sits in this country. And, you know, the police, they do everything with impunity, including lie. And, you know, the thing that's so, I guess, not ironic because we all expect it now, but, you know, they're supposed to be above reproach. I mean, this is how they are positioned when they go into court. You know, the judge will say stuff like, you know, well, you know, I've got the word of a police officer against the citizen, and that, you know, the police officer's word is supposed to be gold. And, you know, what we've also seen, here's another facet of these videos that we keep seeing, the police brutality videos, Tyree Nichols, for example, is that you hear these cops setting up their story. They're getting their story straight, not only among each other, but they're getting their story straight for the video when they say things like stop resisting when the person's not resisting.
Yep.
And so, you know, this is the thing. Broken record again, but look, you have a law there, and they're just ignoring that law because, you know, who's gonna enforce it? Other cops? So, you know, it's good that the judge is calling it out. It's good that it's a story now, and we'll see where it goes. But if if this is happening in Chicago, you can bet it's damn well happening other places. And imagine what it's like when there is no law, where they're free to lie.
The thing here, when we talk about the lying, Greg, and just how they lie with impunity, hell, they'll sit here and lie even when they got the video. Check this out. Go back to my iPad, Anthony. As of November, the police department, this is Chicago, y'all, the police department employed or had recently employed at least 110 people who violated the rule, including 5 who had been the subject of 2 disciplinary investigations that found they had made false written or oral statements. Some were assigned to specialized units, like an FBI task force. Others worked as detectives and were promoted, even after being found to have lied or made a material omission, according to the report. Now, later in the story, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office keeps lists of officers who are barred from testifying in court because they've committed misconduct that calls into question their credibility, including having made false statements. Now, if your ass can't testify, why you on the damn force?
Well, Roland, I mean, you know the answer. I know you're asking it rhetorically. This is the rot. This is really the rot. As Tommy said, you line up your lie and then you count on the people to back the blue. There's never been any trust of law enforcement among African people in this country. Hell, the whole damn concept of policing in the United States was built on the back of surveilling our bodies as we tried to reclaim our humanity from slavery. So in those instances, and when you mentioned State's Attorney Brayboy, she can't call on those cops, not only because they're liars, but because then that puts her in an impossible position. The police are a rogue force. Now, you know, all of us have seen a million times the opening credits of the NBC long-running series Law and Order. The people are represented by 2 entities, the police that arrest your ass and the DA that put you away. These are their stories. What happens when the district attorney, whether it be the district attorney of Philadelphia, the state's attorney of Maryland, finds him or herself, or in St. Louis, as you say, or in San Francisco, as you say, or in Chicago, as you say, finds themselves not with law and order, meaning what? The police are telling you we're not out here to enforce the law. We're out here hunting. But here's the problem. As the old folks used to say, if you lie, you steal, you kill. The rot in a system that was rotten to begin with can reach a point where even those who rely on that system for protection, namely those who want to protect property like they were doing in the streets in May, June, July 2020, they realize that if it gets too bad, then this is going to be a problem for them to continue to steal. So we saw, since we've been on the air in Texas, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, he might face impeachment. I think they impeached him, didn't they? They voted to impeach him. My point is this: when you get so corrupt that the people who rely on you to protect them can't trust you anymore, they'll start throwing you overboard. And I think that's what we're beginning to see in this country at the local level for sure, is that there's enough pushback against this that we might actually make some progress. But one thing's for sure, they're not going to stop lying because that is their job.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Roland, if I could just add.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I was saying about, where political power resides, when they talk about the people are represented, they're only talking about certain people. And I feel that the majority of people, and I think you know who I mean, are okay with the police lying because they think. No. See, Tommy, here we name them. We name them. Just go ahead and name them. Well, I think a lot of white people, and maybe some non-white people too, who want to feel safe and figure, what, if the cops are good, there's a lot of old-fashioned folks who just think, if the cops arrested you, you probably did something wrong, and even if you didn't, better safe than sorry. So, enough people put up with this, not only put up with it, but are sort of okay with it, okay with the cops lying. And that's part of what keeps it from changing too.
Indeed. All right, folks, let me give my final thoughts on this particular day. Frederick Douglass said shortly before he died, he said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand, never have, never will." And he also reminded folks to agitate, agitate, agitate. The night before he was murdered, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, said point blank what we must continue to do, and that is to put pressure, to apply economic pressure, to operate as a collective in order to change the system, in order to change the condition of African Americans. For all of you who are watching and who are listening, I need you to understand something that's very basic and extremely fundamental. And that is, your silence allows people to continue to do what they've always done. Now, there may have been other George Floyd events happening around Washington, D.C. today. But there is no reason in the world at 6 p.m. Eastern, Black Lives Matter Plaza was empty. Where are all of the Democratic politicians in Congress or on the city council in this city? Where were they? We talk about, well, the White House, they've done a lot. And I appreciate the video the White House submitted today. But are you telling me that would have been more powerful than either Biden or Harris or Merrick Garland standing in Lafayette Park at the end of the matter of Black Lives Matter, giving a national address on the need for massive police reform in this country? Are you telling me that they could not have said, I appreciate Karine Jean-Pierre speaking from the White House podium, but I'm talking about constantly elevating. Yeah, I know the debt ceiling negotiations are going on right now, but these folks are being paid enough to do more than one thing at one time. The only way things are going to change in this country is if we are exerting constant pressure. I love all of us who talk about, who love sports. Nolan Richardson had 40 minutes of hell, where from baseline to baseline, constant pressure, full court pressure, never relented. You talk about some of the greatest football teams. Chicago Bears, 85 team, the Baltimore Ravens defense, relentless pressure of the defense against the quarterback and against the offense. That's what is required. It requires relentless pressure. But what it also requires is it requires troops to be a part of this battle. Troops. Cliff Albright, Latasha Brown, generals. But generals need troops. Tamika Mallory, Linda Sarsour, Myson, generals need troops. I can mention a host of folk across this country who are leading the battle. Generals, but they need troops. If we're going to change what's happening on the corporate side, we need black board members acting as generals. We need black senior executives acting as generals. Not just being happy to get their stock options and their paycheck, but how they can ensure that millions and billions are flowing towards black-owned businesses, black organizations to change the condition of our community. What it also requires is, it requires black celebrities not just tweeting and complaining about what Democrats and Republicans are not doing, but how are they harnessing their collective power in the name of Ossie Davis, in the name of Ruby Dee, in the name of Paul Robeson, in the name of Diane Carroll, in the name of Sidney Poitier, in the name of Harry Belafonte, in the name of so many others, in the name of Dick Gregory, to change the condition of this country. Anniversaries are supposed to be seen as recommitment days. When a married couple renews their vows, the intent is for them to remind one another why they got married in the first place. That's why it's called the renewing of the vows. And so if we're talking about the third anniversary of the death of George Floyd, if we're talking about the anniversary of the death of Trayvon Martin, or the day George Zimmerman was found not guilty, if we're talking about MLK's birthday, or the date that he was assassinated, or Malcolm X's birthday, or the date that he was assassinated, if we're talking about Fannie Lou Hamer, or Constance Baker Motley, or any Septima Clark, or any number of the people who came before us, it is going to require us to renew our commitment to the struggle. Because what this generation cannot do is simply sit on our collective asses and complain about the conditions of this country and our states and our cities and then do nothing. So the NAACP and the Human Rights Campaign have issued travel advisories for the state of Florida. And I understand why. But what I want to know is, where is HRC and the NAACP's education initiative to change school boards and to run folk and to elect folk and to organize folks? Where's that plan? We've invited Derek Johnson, the president and CEO, on this show to discuss the travel advisory. But I want to know, where's the plan for 2023 and 2024? I read the statement of Mark Morial, the National Urban League, calling on companies to recommit themselves to the donations they made. But I want to know, where's the accountability plan? When I say the plan, when's the meeting? Who we meeting with? Who we're challenging? And then, are we coming back to Black America and coming to Black-owned media and telling Black folks who answered the call, who didn't answer the call, which then should tell us who we should be supporting? At some point, we have got to stop having performative days of sadness and use these days to serve as bonfires that light us up and fire us up to demand change. As long as there is breath in your body, there's something you can do. The question is, are you prepared to do it? And it's only a question you could ask and answer. You know what we are going to be doing. I love that scene from Scandal. Man, Joe Morton says to Olivia, come hell or high water, you leaving? And he said, I am the hell and the high water. Let me be perfectly clear. To every corporation that thinks you are going to get over on Black people, oh, I am the hell and the high water. And I'm going to continue to give hell every single day, as long as there is breath in my body. And when I'm not here, I want these videos to still be ringing in your ear.
Almost done.
That's how change happens. Again, thank Teresa, thank Greg, thank Tommy. Folks, we appreciate it. Folks, you have a great day. Don't forget to support us in what we do. Download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Support us with your dollars. Your dollars make it possible for us to do what we do and to cover what we cover. And so your check and money orders are critically important. Send them to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Let me give a shout out to the folks who gave via Cash App during the show. Thank you so very much. To Crystal George, Tommy Williams, K. Deal, Cordell Rucker, Ingrid John, Tori Green, Joan Warren, Annette Allen, Benjamin Magwood, Megawatt Beauty, Albert Estwick, Larry Roberts, Tommy Williams, Charles Berry, Anita Nickens, Stacy Robinson, Denise Williams. Thank you so very much for supporting us right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Again, you can give in all these different ways. Please do so. You can also support us by buying my book. That is White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. All of these things happening around the country, attacks on critical race theory, I call all these things out, but of course, white media won't book a brother on the show because they're afraid to have the conversation. You be sure to get the book and spread the word. Folks, I will see you tomorrow. Prayers to the George Floyd family on this day, his brothers, his sisters, his cousins, but also his daughter as well. That brother's not coming home, and we can be sure to fight to make sure other brothers and sisters do come home. Holla! Folks, Black Star Network is here.
hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape. With me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.